Hello and welcome back to The Given Kitchen, where we experiment with and test out historic dishes. My name is Teresa Given and today we are going to be traveling to the Roman Empire. Now it's summertime and there are three things that I think of when I think of summertime. One, I think of traveling. Actually, I always think of traveling, so there are actually two things that I always think of when I think of summer. One is swimming. And I do mean any kind of swimming, ocean swimming, river swimming, lake swimming, pool swimming. I don't really care as long as it's swimming. I adore swimming. Anyways, and barbecues. I love something hot off the grill with a large dollop of mustard. And as it turns out, the ancient Romans actually would have agreed with me on this. Mustard has been enjoyed for millennia. It is believed that mustard originated in ancient Egypt. Mustard is even written about in the Bible. In Matthew 17:20, it states, "For truly I say to you, if you have faith like a grain of mustard seed, you will say to this mountain, 'Move from here to there,' and it will move, and nothing will be impossible for you." And if you have ever seen a mustard seed, they are small. They are very small. So that is a lot of moving around for a small amount of faith. Imagine moving a mountain. Wow. Meanwhile, Hippocrates believed that mustard was the end all for pain relief. He loved mustard, thought it could cure any ache or pain. Along the same lines, Pliny the Elder believed this very much the same and had numerous recipes containing mustard for all manners of ailments. We know that mustard was used for both medicinal and culinary purposes by the ancient Greeks. And the Romans, being the gigantic copycats that they were, followed suit and did the same thing. Historians believe that mustard was consumed in much of the same way that we consume black pepper today. Whole, dried seeds of it would have been present at meals, and if you wanted some, you could just crack a little bit and sprinkle it on top of the dish that you were trying to zhuzh up. By the 1st century, we start to see it being made into sauces or even placed into powder blends. And you know how I love a good spice powder blend. Spice powders. Love them. By the 4th century, the Romans were fairly obsessed with mustard. They were consuming it constantly. And I don't know, this could be a reaction to the fact that there was no longer silphium around, so they had to have another thing to obsess over. And in my mind, it's mustard. Mustard, baby. You could put it on everything. And this is apparent in Apicius' cookbooks. He liked to use mustard a lot for mostly meat dishes, fish dishes. He just loved a good thing of mustard. So we're actually going to start with an Apicius dish today, and that is going to be a simple mustard or a sweet mustard. Now this mustard is ideal for if you are in a rush, and it only contains 5 ingredients. For this recipe, you will need 1 cup of mustard seeds, 1 cup of white wine vinegar, half a cup of honey, 1/4 cup extra virgin olive oil. As I stated, this recipe is ideal for if you are in a hurry. Now, I started by grinding up my mustard seeds in my mortar and pestle, which is possibly the tiniest mortar and pestle known to man, so it took forever. So if you are truly in a hurry, I would either have a bigger mortar and pestle than what I have, or use a coffee grinder. It will definitely quicken up this process. Once I had a fairly fine powder, I added my honey, olive oil, and white wine vinegar. I mixed it all together and I tested it out. Now you can adjust these ingredients as you go. This is what I did. The thing is, this is an ancient recipe. There are no measurements, so there's really no right or wrong way to do this. Just adjust it to your liking, and that is exactly what I did. Now, when I first tried this, I had less honey and less vinegar, and I believed the recipe was extremely bitter. I did not like it. I kind of choked on it. So I adjusted it some and then tasted it again. It tasted much better. Now it's sat for a little while, and I will try it after it's basically marinated for some time, and we'll see how that turns out. Now, if you're looking at this, you're going to notice that this is a very dark mustard. Most mustards that we're familiar with today in the United States are a brilliant yellow color. Now, this in baseball stadiums all across the US wasn't first seen until 1904. The ingredients common in our modern mustard is dried mustard, vinegar, and salt. There are some variations on this, of course, including adding garlic, onion, walnuts, and honey. And for some, to make the mustard as yellow as possible, they will even add turmeric. It's not going to really add much to the flavor, but it will definitely add to that brilliant yellow color that is so sought after. Turns out, though, that brilliant yellow mustard was not always ideal. In fact, a beautiful white mustard was the thing of the past. For the second mustard, I'm going to bring your attention to a couple of things because this is the strange one. This mustard is actually from the 1st century. I saved it for second because it's a bit of a more complicated dish, and I adjusted the recipe from the original source just because it would probably be a little unsafe for the modern kitchen. We are going to go step by step through what was called for in the original recipe and how I changed this for the modern cook. For this recipe, you will need 1 cup of yellow mustard seeds, 2 cups of cold water, 5 hot coals, 2 cups of water, 1 teaspoon of saltpeter, half a cup of pine nuts, 1 cup of white wine vinegar, and 2 tablespoons of starch. I have never put hot coal in a food in my entire life, but that is what the author is about to have us do. Hot coals. In the original recipe, Kulamela has us take the mustard seeds, soak them, drain off the water, and then place hot coals inside of the seeds. Put saltpeter on top of that, and then put water on top of all of that. Now, he writes that this is to get rid of the bitterness of the dish. Now, I am all for getting rid of bitterness in a dish. Goodbye bitterness. But honestly, who has saltpeter just lying around? And also, hot coal, dangerous inside. Unless you're cooking outside and you happen to have hot coal there with you, I would leave this part out. So I have adjusted the recipe accordingly. To make this recipe, I started by soaking the mustard seeds for several hours. After which I drained the water and pounded the mustard seeds into a thick paste. With my teeny tiny mortar and pestle, this was quite time consuming. Feel free to use a blender or a food processor to expedite this step. After turning the seeds into a paste, I placed them in a large bowl. Now here is where I start to deviate from the original recipe. Instead of placing hot coals in there with saltpeter, I ended up putting just regular table salt into the mixture and then covering that in hot boiling water and letting it sit for 10 minutes. Now, I believe to make the recipe even better, you're going to want to use pickling salt, but I didn't have pickling salt and it didn't occur to me till later. So use what you have on hand. And if you have saltpeter, go for it, I guess. After allowing the mixture to sit for those 10 minutes, I drained off the water. I then pounded the pine nuts into a thick paste before adding them to the mustard mixture. Following this step, I stirred in the vinegar and the starch. The starch used probably would have been a wheat starch, but feel free to make this gluten-free and use a corn or a potato starch. I actually ended up using a corn starch. Once everything was blended together, this is when the magic was about to happen. I placed the entire mixture into a pot on the stove and brought it up to a boil. And then I turned it down to a simmer. And I stirred, and I stirred, and I stirred. And as I stirred, the color of the mixture started to lighten. Now, it never turned white, that brilliant white that is supposedly the ideal color for a beautiful banquet mustard. But it was much lighter in color than what I am used to for a mustard. So we have our end results. They look very different from each other. They look different from what I am used to. I am sure there are people in different parts of the world that have mustards that look similar to this. But you know what? It's a new experience for me and I am excited for it. I am going to start by just tasting the mustards on their own, and then I'm going to try them on a patty. And that's because you have to have the full experience, you know? All right, so we're going to start with the lighter mustard, and that's because I believe the darker one is going to overpower the flavor of the lighter one, and I might not, with that darker one in my mouth, I might not be able to taste the lighter one. So here we go. Yes, that is so good. That's amazing. That would be good on so many things. Patties, burgers, sausages, vegetables. I don't know, fruit maybe, I don't know. All right, let's get to this darker one. I was right. Very different, much stronger. There is a distinctive difference in the spice level from the light mustard to the darker mustard, and they're both good. They could even be mixed and I think they would still be delicious. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try that light mustard on a patty. Delightful. Absolutely delightful. It is very light in flavor compared to the darker one. So it has a very fresh, summery taste to it. Also, it doesn't have any honey in it, but those pine nuts give it a nice sweet flavor. So it's sweeter than I was expecting. Also, pine nuts tend to have a bit of a buttery taste to them, so I'm assuming this causing a smoothness that the other one just doesn't possess. So let's try this dark mustard. That one on the burger is superior. It tastes incredible. It brings out all of the flavors from the burger, and it's also spicy and sweet and has this beautiful texture. They're both amazing. They should both be tried on everything. But that dark mustard, try that dark mustard. It does not take much to make this mustard, and let me tell you, it is worth it. It is worth all that pounding in that teeny tiny little mortar and pestle. That is it from the Given Kitchen today. I hope everyone enjoyed both of these recipes and are willing to try at least one of them. I promise next time I will do something more than a spice blend in a sauce, hopefully something that everybody can get into. I will be back again next week, and this time it will be more than just a sauce or a spice. It'll be an actual dish that we'll try next week. I hope to see everybody then, and have a great week. Bye. Mustard seasoning my teeth.